Hi, everyone. Welcome to the P3 podcast. Fantastic guest today. Somebody I've known for 6 or 7 years now and has gone on to do some amazing things. And I can bravely and confidently say that it's going to go on to even better things moving forward. That's for sure. Amy Cokayne, England Rugby. Welcome to the P3 podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Nah, it's great to catch up with you. It's been a while. We've been meaning to do it for a long, long time. And I think that the conversation we have over the next 30 to 40 minutes will probably explain why, because we've both been really busy, you especially, but so much has happened and so much has changed for the positive. And I think it's just an amazing story you've got behind it, which I know our listeners will be really, really interested in. So Amy, just give us a bit of just an overview of where you're at in terms of your career. So we were talking obviously just before we started the podcast in terms of you're 24 now, you're 50 odd caps, you've played in World Cups, World Cup finals, you've won numerous Grand Slams, which as a Welshman, got to bite my knuckles at, but they're trying their best to improve. Let's put it that way. But in terms of just give us a little high view picture of your career to date.
So like I said, got 50 odd caps now for England. Got capped back in 2015, so I've been playing for a few years. That's pretty much it.
What club are you at the moment?
I was playing for Harlequins. Been there for the last 2 seasons. It's been really good, actually. A good change for myself. The setup we've got is like second to none in terms of women's rugby, where it's at the minute. We strive as a club to make it an environment that creates the best people, the best team to ultimately go and win, but to have the best environment. So yeah, it's been really good move for myself.
Yeah, that environment's so important for creating that culture, isn't it? And then what you find is, and I'm sure you're seeing it as you've created that environment and culture, as you sign new players, they just naturally merge into that culture in terms of that classic statement of this is just what we do around you. I bet it's, we're on time, we look after each other, we work hard, we train hard, we win together, we lose together, and we crack on.
Yeah, it was a bit of a weird one. I was at Wasp before, and I was looking to move on and didn't really know where I wanted to go, but I kind of always written Quins off. I don't know, there's kind of the stigma around, Quins, no one really likes them. And obviously I spoke to my dad, who you know very well, wise old man that he is, and he was just like Quins is kind of like the Paras. Obviously we've got the military connection. He was like, everyone hates the Paras, but when you're in the Paras, you love it and you really buy into it, and it's like everything. So kind of took that on board. Obviously went to Quins, and now I'm now one of those people that everyone hates being at Quins. It's definitely, it's a good place to be.
Have you, in your time there, I know you've only been there a couple of seasons, and I suppose if we were to be honest, last season was difficult because the guys that are maybe listening at some point in the future, we're in early 2021 at the minute, so we're very much in the midst of COVID. So, the 2019-2020 season was obviously broken up at the back end of the season. And obviously this season's been really difficult in itself. Have you managed to sort of get under the bonnet, and what is it about the Quins then that potentially people don't like? Is it jealousy? Is it envy? Is it, because you're London based? What do you think it is?
I think it's like we're very lucky and we're very well supported by the men's side, I suppose. We get to use the same facilities. We don't have to pay for kit. We occasionally get say trainers from Adidas, who's one of our sponsors. And we've still got some teams that pay 100 or 200 quid for kit, gym membership, match fees, stuff like that. That just seems so ancient now, like so backwards to where we should be. So I think it's more like we're the ones that have, and there's people that don't have it and kind of think we're maybe spoiled by what we've got, but probably the wrong way of looking at it, really.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, you get that in all teams, in all sports, don't you? And obviously I want to talk a little bit more about the sport. So for those that probably don't know that much about your background, I think it's a fascinating story, especially the elements that I know about it, or I think I know, because I might have got it wrong. But obviously, I know your father from obviously a time in the RAF together, which again is a common theme with you now, which we'll talk about later. But I know your dad got an opportunity to transfer from the Royal Air Force over to the Australian Air Force. The New Zealand Air Force.
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Yeah, when you were quite young. How old were you when that move was happening?
Yeah, I was 9, so kind of in that weird age. I was not really young, not really old. So yeah, but weird age.
Yeah, it's still a difficult time, I would have thought. On how did you find the move? Because I'm sure you obviously still left friends, etc. Was it difficult or straightforward enough for you?
It's just one of those things. I think as kids, me and my brother moved like loads, so we were moving every couple of years anyway. But it was just quite funny because when we moved to where we were at before we left, so we moved to Lichfield. My dad was like, "This is it. We're not going to move you from here. We've bought a house now. This is going to be stable platform. No more moving." And to be fair, we were there for 3 years before we moved to the other side of the world. So it wasn't necessarily shocked. I'd never even heard of New Zealand, didn't know where it was in the world. My dad actually told me, "Oh, there's no flies there," because the day he told me there was an annoying fly buzzing around the living room. I hate flies. And he was like, "Yeah, we're moving to New Zealand because there's no flies there." Then obviously we got to New Zealand, they've got like worse stuff than we've got here. But yes, it's just, but you look back on it now and it wasn't a massive impact as what it probably potentially could have had.
Yeah, I think my experience of traveling around as well every couple of years is you do get used to it, and I think there's a sweet spot, isn't it? If it was maybe 2 or 3 years later, 11, 12, it might have been, and you're starting to get roots down, with your friends and your clubs and things like that. It might have been different, but seemed to work out. And obviously, it's a very different culture to what you were brought up with. Was that quite evident, or was it just at the age of 9? It was just, well, I'm just cracking on with it. This is just what it is.
I think I adapted probably the quickest and the most out of my family in terms of little things like when you go to school in New Zealand, you take your shoes off before you go in the classroom because you're not allowed to put shoes in the classroom. Well, at the school that I was at, and that was quite a common thing. So you just get used to being barefoot a lot. I know that's the thing that most people know about New Zealand is like being barefoot. So just little things like in our driveway in our house was all like gravel, and I could just walk on it as if it was like the softest, flattest ground ever. And then you've got like my mum and dad that look like they're just walking on needles and just couldn't hack it. So little things like that. And you just I obviously picked up the accent when I was living out there, which I've now lost again since moving back. Yeah, just kind of adapted it like and try to embrace the culture as much as possible. Like my brother even tried to learn like the Māori language and stuff like that was one of the lessons he took at school. So yeah, I think we really like embraced the culture as much as we could really as a family.
And I think that's a big part of moving around, isn't it? You've got especially a big shift like that down right the way down south to embrace the culture, because then I think the locals appreciate that, in terms of that blending in, and they have that mutual respect for you respecting their culture. And I think that ties quite nicely in with your success over there within rugby. So you went from being Aston Villa junior girls goalkeeper, so you're obviously quite sporty, to then starting to, I guess, to play rugby over there. Was that the first sport you played, or did you play other things?
No, so I rugby and football was like the main thing. So when we were in England, I played football on the Saturday, rugby on the Sunday. As much as my mum hated driving me all around the country all the time to do that, but so yeah, rugby and football was like the main thing. And then when we moved out to New Zealand, I just stuck with rugby because they both played on a Saturday, so you couldn't do both. Luckily, because I'd be so rubbish at football now. But then when I was out in New Zealand, I picked up like javelin and stuff like that, which was something completely different. But it got too difficult to kind of try and do javelin and rugby, so I had to kind of choose. And luckily, I chose rugby because I don't think I'd be very good at javelin even now.
and the New Zealand rugby sort of culture and infrastructure is so famous, literally around the world, and in terms of they literally live and breathe it, isn't it? Is that what you experienced as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think we lived in some really small little places, but they still had a rugby club, and everyone from there, like the rugby club was the hub of the whole place. So, and you have like the massive rivalries. Like I lived in a place called Fielding, and you either Fielding Old Boys or Fielding Yellows, and the rivalry was just as big as any, say, football rivalry over here. So yeah, the rugby is just such a way of life over there, and I think everyone just has to be a part of it. You've got no choice.
Yeah. Do you think that's played a part in your success, in terms of having that experience quite young on?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when I was out in New Zealand, I managed to, like, you could play women's rugby from the age of 13 if you were big enough and you were stupid enough, you could do it. So I was exposed to women's rugby at such a young age as well. Like over here, you can now play at 17, but before it was 18. I've only changed it in the last couple of years. So, I had a good 5 years on people over here being exposed to getting smashed by black ferns at the age of 13. You have to learn how to look after yourself when that happens to you. So it's definitely shaped who I am and definitely the rugby player that I am.
I would imagine though at 13, obviously you're big enough, strong enough to compete with the women. Obviously you wouldn't have played, but I can imagine you might or might not be there quite physically, but mentally it would have been a huge journey in terms of building that psychological fitness, that psychological strength to just go and compete. Because I can imagine, again, with a strong culture within New Zealand, that there's just no backward step on the pitch. It's just you either step in and play your part or you just stay off the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. You always like try and convince maybe the people around you, or even try and convince yourself that, oh no, I am good enough to play at this level, like it'll be fine. But I do definitely remember being a bit like, well, women's rugby, like I only played against like boys my age and schoolgirls rugby up until that point. So I definitely remember being nervous for the first game. But then, like you said, you've just got no time to even take a backward step. You're either in or you're out. And luckily I chose to be in, and yeah, went from there.
Brilliant. So just fast forward then. So if I remember it, and I said earlier on about the story being right, wasn't it obviously you're the English girl in New Zealand, which you're either getting bantered for or people forget very quickly. And then obviously you're playing at a really high standard over there. You develop year on year on year. And then was it the England touring team where you played against them and then there was a conversation after it, which obviously triggered where you are now? Did I get that part of the story correct?
Yeah, so I was 16 and I got called into the Black Ferns like trial. There was like a trial camp, so they invited loads of people to kind of trial to be in the Black Ferns team. And my coach at the time for my school team, he was Welsh, and he kind of went to me, oh well, you're English, so if you kind of play for the Black Ferns, that'll be it. You won't play for England. Like, have you ever thought about that? Like, would you rather play for England? Like, he didn't really know where I sat on that. And to be honest, I'd never even thought about it, because at that point in my life, I wasn't thinking about international rugby, because I thought, oh, it's years away. I don't have anything to worry about. And I went, well, obviously I'm English, so I would love to be able to play for England, but I just can't see how that would even be a thing, because I'm obviously living in New Zealand. And at 16, there was no way I was ever going to be moving back to England anytime soon. And he kind of just went, all right, leave it with me. We'll see what happens, basically. And then luckily that year, England, were coming over on a tour. So Jonesy, my coach, set it up that our schoolgirls team went on a rugby tour to the same place where the England girls were going to be playing. And then one day he said, "You come with me. We're going for a walk." And we ended up in a Starbucks, and there was the current coaches of the time, so Gary Street, Smithy, Nikki Ponsford, who's still the head of performance now, and one of the English players who was actually a Kiwi. And we were met in a Starbucks, and my coach had sent them like a highlights reel of my rugby through my women's rugby and my schoolgirl stuff, and said, "This girl's English, she'd like to play for England, but she lives out here. Like, what's the situation, basically?" So I just met up with them, had a bit of a chat about it, what it would look like. And then I think it was less than a year later, I was back in, well, like for January or December of that year, I was back in England at Hartford College, to do the dream of playing for England. And then in the February, got my first 20s cap. So it all moved pretty quickly, really.
Yeah, rapid, wasn't it? And it was in that period, obviously, where we met for the first time. So just rewind a little bit. So obviously, you've had the conversation. They found a way of providing an opportunity for you to come back, which was obviously college placement to make sure your schooling was okay and your qualifications were up to scratch, but also providing the opportunity for you to continue to develop with the rugby. And then obviously there was conversations around, university with Loughborough, which obviously come off as well. What was it like for the family, do you think? I mean, I can imagine the answer to this. I've never really spoke to your dad about it, but in terms of that decision of, your dad sat there with your mum having a conversation over a beer, I was thinking, right, do we move back and give Amy the chance to England? Are we ready to move back? Do you have any awareness of that conversation?
Well, I always say it's not my fault that the whole family moved back because, so like my mum and dad had built their like dream home, like bought a plot of land, built their dream house. We were living in their dream house in New Zealand, like nice bit of land, which subsequently had to sell to move back to England. But originally the plan was I would move back to England by myself and kind of just live with family because all our family still lives over here in England. We didn't have anyone out in New Zealand, so I was just going to go to Hartbury, be a boarder, and then when I had like holidays and stuff, just go and stay like with my nan or something. But then my brother, this is who I blame for the whole situation. He was at uni at the time, and he went, "Well, if she's moving back, I want to move back. I want to join the British Army." So then both kids were moving back. So then the parents kind of had no choice. They're like, right, well, there's no point us being over here and then being over there. So we'll all move back, and that's what happened.
Yeah, your dad's definitely got a part to play in that because for the guys not listening, your dad's an absolutely rugby fanatic, isn't he? So the fact of there's no way on this earth was he going to stay in New Zealand while his daughter's got a chance of playing for England. That's for sure. He'd be, especially the way the frequency England playing now and again when the groups are, he'd be spending months and months in the UK. So yeah, but always put the blame on your brother for sure. And when we've had conversations over Christmas about it's always your brother's fault. When we tag him in this. So you arrived back in the UK. You obviously your family moved back to Lichfield, obviously the area where you were from. Your dad manages to get a job back in the Air Force, which is obviously where I met him. He actually came in as my boss at the time. And my first knowledge of you was gone for a coffee. Guess where we went? Went to a Starbucks with your dad. And that must have been a New Zealand thing. And he said, talking about job stuff and what have you. And he said, "Oh, by the way, my daughter's come over. She's at Hartbury, and she's got a good chance of playing for England one day, and I think it's one of our it'd be really good if you meet her." And I think it was probably 6 or 9 months later, obviously once you'd settled in and you might have been on a school holiday and that, where you come onto the RAF camp to see your dad, and we sat down for half an hour or 40 minutes, just seeing what you wanted to achieve and trying to build out a roadmap, didn't we, in terms of what would it look like, what would I have to do, and how do we break it down into some logical steps. And you dropped it in just before we come on the podcast that you've still got that piece of paper.
Yeah. So it was in a notebook. I think you gave me the notebook because I turned up to your office and didn't have anything. So you gave me this notebook, and it was written in there. And I've still got it. Still there. Yeah.
Can you remember what some of the steps were in there?
Yeah. So one was go to Loughborough Uni. One was just get selected for England, like the senior squad. One was start my own wellness business, which hasn't quite done. That's kind of completely scrapped now. And then obviously another one was win a World Cup, or get selected for a World Cup and then win a World Cup. So I've done some of it. There's still a few more things that need to be ticked off.
And we can talk about the World Cup now, because obviously you did end up going to Rugby World Cup as well, fairly early on in your career, in all fairness, and you got mighty close to winning it, didn't you? What was your recollection of that World Cup as a whole in terms of an experience? Granted, it wasn't the result you wanted, but what about the overall experience?
Yeah, I think if you take the result out of it, it was an amazing time. You're so just in this bubble of rugby, and it was obviously in Ireland, so we had lots of friends and family that could come over and kind of be part of that experience with you, which was awesome because it's obviously so close. We were staying in uni halls that was like flats, so we got quite close as a group as well. We could cook our own meals, kind of have our own schedule, apart from obviously the training times and stuff. But in a World Cup, it's like 4-day turnaround, so you basically play a game, recover, train, play again. So it was a really awesome experience, but just that last final hurdle was still just that real big sticking point, and still kind of leaves that sour taste in my mouth a bit. Even when people ask me about it now, I'm still a bit like, oh, I hate it. But yeah, hopefully this year we've got a chance to maybe change that.
Yeah, I think it's quite natural. Obviously, you don't play at the standard you are without being competitive, and I think part of life and journey and the experience is obviously the wins are sweet. You know, the losses really hurt, and you remember being hurt, and you use that to drive you forward, don't you? And then the next success is even sweeter.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what makes World Cup so amazing, is they only come around every 4 years. So it's not like, like a club game. If you lose a club game, the next week you can put it right. But World Cups are just so far and few in between that you're dwelling on that loss. You could dwell on it for 4 years if you wanted to. Obviously, you try not to, because that'd be a bit stupid, and park it, move on, start the next goal. But yeah, it's what it is, and see how it goes next one.
Yeah, and I think it is slightly different. I think with elite sport, where there's a big part of in the real world, in real life, is about accepting it and moving on. But I think in elite sport, you've got to accept it, but also remember how it made you feel, and there's a slight difference there, isn't it? Because you do need to have that fire in your belly to keep you pushing forward, striving for the next one and the next opportunity. So give us a bit of information on the next World Cup. When is it? Where is it? And how's the squad looking?
Yeah, so it's in New Zealand, actually. So New Zealand are the ones that beat us in the final in 2017. So yeah, 2021 in New Zealand, September, October. Yeah, should be good. I'm in England camp at the minute, so we're still managing to train for all these random corona times that we're living through. So hopefully we can, get the Six Nations played, have some more game time. Should be in a really good place to have a good performance at the World Cup.
Yeah, fingers crossed too. And it's great that, elite sport can carry on through these times, because it's obviously great for you guys with the big tournaments coming up, but it's also great for the fans to watch at home, because no different to you, or you're no different to us in terms of being at home all day can be a little bit monotonous, can't it, and repetitive. So having some, live actual sport to watch at the weekend is fantastic. And I know you're a sports fan and you watch it yourself as well. So it's great that we're able to do that. So World Cup coming up this year, but I think what I'd like to ask you about now is there was obviously a pivotal point. Well, there's probably been a couple over the last 3 or 4 years where you obviously went professional at one point, and that was on obviously a rugby football union contract to the RFU as part of your England setup, if you like. And then as it happens sometimes, because unfortunately there's not a finite amount of money, they have to prioritize, don't they? And then within a couple of years they prioritized the Olympic Games again, so the sevens team, and budgets got redirected, which obviously then took away your professional contract, and then you were obviously looking at different avenues and careers and ways of literally, how to earn a living. And you obviously made the brave decision to follow your dad's footsteps and join the RAF, which I know there was a few snags with, if you remember us having a chat in terms of, are you English, are you New Zealand, which one are you? And the old pen pushers were blocking a few things, but it was sorted in the end. How's that been for you in terms of a transformation from being, a professional athlete to being in the Air Force?
I think it's probably one of the best decisions I made, even in terms of like my rugby career. Obviously coming off the back of that 2017 World Cup and being contracted for that whole year was just rugby, and for it to not turn out so well at the end of it, it was kind of a bit like, rugby's gone bad, so my life must be bad. So for me personally, it was just kind of really important for myself, and it's not right for everyone, and I completely understand that, but I needed to have something outside of rugby, and just to kind of like set myself up. Our contracts aren't long-term contracts. I could get injured tomorrow and that'd be it. I wouldn't be able to play rugby again. So I just wanted to make sure that, after rugby, my life was kind of sorted, and I had some kind of direction of where I wanted to go. And I'd kind of fallen out of the game, if I'm honest, fallen out of love with the game. So I think having that time away and to get that kind of, I needed to miss rugby and really come back like hungry and wanting to train and wanting to be the best I can, because I think it had got to the stage for myself where I was like, I don't enjoy it, so I'm not trying very hard. So I probably wasn't putting my best foot forward and being the best player that I can. And you can't be like that when you're in, trying to play for England. You've got to be willing to give your best at all times, every session, turn up and and be the best version of yourself, I suppose, then I wasn't. There was no way I was. So yeah, I took a year out, did my officer training, and yeah, managed to make my way back into the England squad, luckily, and then subsequently now we've got contracts again. So thankfully the RAF have put me on elite athlete status, which they've released me pretty much full time for 2 years as of right now to fulfill my England contract. So living the best of both worlds at the minute.
Yeah, it's great. But obviously you've created that though by leaning forward and joining the RAF and putting your name forward to join up, which arguably might have been a natural step with, the background you've had in the upbringing, and you've seen the lifestyle they have. But the fact that they have that elite athlete status, which for the listeners just means that basically you basically get released from your military duties and you become a professional athlete, and you can do it in any sport. And obviously with Amy, it's with rugby, and they support you through everything you can. But as soon as that moment where either you decide that's enough, you want to stop playing rugby, or your contract is finished, then you just go back and join the RAF and do your day-to-day job, don't you? Which I know, obviously, Amy, you joined up as an officer, and you've joined the Provost branch, which is basically the RAF police. And I think that's going to be, it gives you so many opportunities moving forward post your career, whether you play until you're 40, you can have a career in the RAF until you're 60. So I think that's what makes it really sweet, and a sweet deal for everybody involved.
Yeah, definitely. I can't really thank the Air Force and actually the Provost branch enough. There's some amazing people that have put into place and put a lot of hard work to get me to the position where I am, luckily enough to just play rugby essentially at the minute with that fallback of I've always got a career. One of my close mates, Lucy and I, who I went to college with, uni with, she actually ended up doing the same. So I went through officer training in Provost branch, but she still plays rugby essentially at the same level as I do, because she still plays in the Premier 15. She plays for Wasps, but she has a day job. She does a full-on job and still has to try and compete.
Yeah.
At that level, and I just think, like, I'm knackered now just doing the training. She has to do all that and then, be head of security for a unit somewhere. That just blows my mind. I couldn't imagine doing that. So when you have those days where you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this anymore, like I need something else. And I think, Lucy and I is doing that. So
yeah, Lucy's getting up.
Lucky.
Lucy's probably in a house iron in a uniform at the minute, so I'm all right. I can go to the gym for half an hour and do some bench press. It's fine.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about perspective, isn't it? I need to just remind myself of that a few times.
Absolutely, perspective. Sure, it's massive. So that's a great great backstory to where you are, and it's amazing, especially. It might dawn on you, but it might not. You got 50 odd caps now at the age of 24, but in one of the hardest positions on the pitch, you're obviously playing in the front row at hooker there, which is physically and mentally demanding. It's an amazing achievement, Amy, and I've got no doubt you're going to even better things. So thinking about going on to better things, World Cup's obviously, Six Nations first, training camp, Six Nations, and then the World Cup in September, October, which. Let's hope that we've got a firm grasp on COVID by then, with the vaccines all rolled out and sorted out, and we'll probably listen back to this at the end of the year. And of course it was, we were months off. But what's the bigger plans though moving forward? Have you got any sort of personal goals and ambitions that you want to achieve?
I've not really looked much past the World Cup, if I'm honest, because as rugby players, we kind of live in this 4-year cycle of World Cups. This year is kind of like the year, isn't it? So I haven't massively looked too much past that, and stupidly or not, I don't necessarily have much individual goals. Like I'm not sat here going, I want to get to 100 caps or anything like that. Kind of all the success I get as an individual is all through the team. So I think right now sole focus is purely like on that World Cup essentially.
Yeah, and I guess 100 caps could be a goal, and it's achievable for you. But I think that with you having your head screwed on as you have, in terms of I'll just train well today, I'll get picked for the next match, and then you just roll match to match, don't you? And don't worry about that. If that happens, then great. But it's all about the next game, and I suppose it's the equivalent of your Olympic year this year, isn't it? You know, it's once every 4 years, all eyes on the prize and building up towards that and reassess at the end of the year. What about professionally then, RAF? So do you see yourself going in full time at some point, or is it a case of just going to play it by ear and see how your career's going and see how the conversations happen with the Royal Air Force?
Yeah, no, I definitely see myself having a career in the Air Force, in the police, definitely. You know, the reason I chose the police is I just think it's just such a diverse role. You can go down so many different avenues, and I genuinely find it quite interesting, the stuff that you can do within the police. So, yeah, I hope to have a long career and do some cool stuff there as well. And rugby will just be this thing that I used to do.
Brilliant. And I don't think I can let you go without on a chat about the competitive family. Again, you and I had some conversations not so long ago, actually, on Instagram while it was happening live, I believe. But obviously, your brother joined the army, so he got his wish too. Your dad's ex-army and Royal Air Force and New Zealand Air Force, so competitive nature's there. I'm not sure how competitive your mum is, but I bet it's in there somehow. But obviously, you've got a Christmas tradition in terms of the bench press challenge. And do you want to tell us a little bit about that, about what you have to do?
Yeah, so essentially, well, I'll tell you how it came about. So with England, each year we have fitness testing, usually on about the 3rd of January or something like that. And it's like a 2-day camp. And one of the tests is your max bench press. So how much you can, like just one rep, how much weight you can bench. And it was Christmas Day, must have been about 3 or 4 years ago now. And me and my dad were just talking about it, and he was like, well, I bet you I can bench more than you. Because as you say, we're so competitive. That was it. We were in the car down the rugby club having a bench off, essentially. My brother was away at the time, so he wasn't there. But it was quite funny because when we were driving there, he was like, you know, one of us is going to get hurt. Like, we're not going to come out of this and be fine. One of us is going to get hurt. So we went down the club. Dad put his back out, obviously, so he was the one that got hurt. But yeah, then every year it just it's kind of escalated. But so now it's your max bench press followed by straight into your max press ups. We kind of brought that in because my brother's a lot bigger and stronger than me and my dad, so we're there benching like 90 and he's benching like 140. So we thought he might be rubbish at press ups, but he's actually all right at press ups as well. So yeah, that's kind of the competition. It's been about 4 years now. Yeah,
brilliant. It's good fun, and actually, it got quite a bit of traction on Instagram this Christmas, didn't it? Because you were Instagramming live in and commentating around it, where you know people sat at home, they'd had their breakfast and opened their presents, and they're waiting around for lunch. Well, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to tune into the Cokayne bench off, aren't you? That's what you're going to do. Even I did, and I do remember having a chat with you, and you had a big debate on your Instagram lives, right? Who should go first? Because historically you guys have gone first and then your brother was due to go at the end, but he knows what the target is, so it's always easier when you know what you need to hit, and he never sort of maxed out or pushed himself. And I think your Instagram vote unanimously said that he had to go first, and to see him in pain was brilliant, wasn't it?
Oh, I know, when he'd actually pushed himself and done as many press ups as he did, and then was just collapsed on the floor. that was probably better than winning, to be honest with you, because that was the first year he's had to, because he can normally bench nearly what we can bench and press up combined. He would say, I think this year we got combined, I got like 148 or something like that, and he was benching 140. So then he would just have to get down and do 9 press ups and he would win. So hence we brought in the vote, and it's now, that is the rules now. So whoever wins it goes first the next year. So he will probably forever go first. But
evolving beast like it. And what's the punishment for the loser then?
We don't actually have a punishment. We just have a rule that you have to get at least 100. So your combined total has to be at least 100. So like bench 70, do 30 press ups or whatever. So I'm still waiting for the day when my brother brings home a girl and we make her do it, and she doesn't get to eat Christmas dinner because she didn't get 100 points.
Yeah, brilliant. I do remember that one. Yeah, so if you don't score 100 points, so you combined kilograms bench pressing and your number of press ups, you don't get to have dinner. That's great. But I've just got images in my mind, and I'll throw it out there, that the loser has to wear like a giant turkey suit while he's in dinner or something, a big inflatable thing around the table, you know, something ridiculous like that, because that'll really drive you and your dad to compete, especially as he gets a little bit older as well, and you can banter him about that for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with some form of punishment. Maybe that's for next year.
Amy, before we wrap up, then I normally do like a quick fire questions. And just answer the first thing that comes to your head, and we'll just go from there. So I ask all the sporting people that come on the podcast the same sort of question. So we'll just start from there. So who's your sporting hero?
Kelly Holmes.
Ah, nice show. Didn't expect that one. Your non-sporting hero?
Oh. Probably my dad. Why not? We'll go with my dad.
Ah, legend. Yeah, legend. I'll tag him in this when we start putting it on social. That's for sure. You have to listen to that bit. I'll say fast forward to the 40th minute. Right. So you've retired from England. You've got X amount of caps and a few World Cup wins, hopefully. You're allowed one big dinner. So you're allowed 5 guests. Me and your dad are already at the table, by the way, because obviously we're VIPs.
Okay.
Who's the other 3?
Oh, I would say the Queen. I want to meet the Queen, so she's still going to be alive whenever that happens, and she's going to be there. Adele, I love Adele, the singer.
Yeah, it's good. Go on.
Why, it's really good at singing.
Why Adele then?
Oh, I love Adele. I'm like obsessed, absolutely obsessed. That's like my pre-match music as well. Is like Adele. Everyone's like, "Oh, we need like pumped up music." I'm like, I just need to listen to some Adele. I just love it.
You're chasing some pavements.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, right, one more. I should really pick someone quite interesting, shouldn't I? We'll go Kelly Holmes. Why not? Considering she's my sporting hero, it'd be quite nice to talk to her, I suppose.
I tell you what, I couldn't have predicted that. So the Queen, Kelly Holmes, and Adele. What a round table that would be. Okay, who's the out of all your England teammates then? Who's the biggest hooligan on a night out?
Probably Marley Packer. Yeah.
Stay away from her.
Like some rogue nights out of her.
If you could achieve one thing in your rugby career, what would it be?
Win a World Cup.
Yeah, I think it was going to be that. We already set that one up. Okay, and the next question was going to be around what's your biggest goal, but I think that ties in quite nicely with what we just talked about already. And everybody from Pro Noctis, that's supporting you and cheering on all the way, even though I'm Welsh. But the guys at the team support you. We wish you well in September and October over in New Zealand, but also for the Six Nations coming up, Amy. And we really appreciate the time. I know you've got a busy diary at the moment and you got to go off and practice your bench press ahead of Christmas already. I know that. So thanks very much for joining us, and hopefully catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Phil.